Locating Solomon's Temple by Norma Robertson. The location of the temple platform where both Solomon and Herod's temples once stood has remained a mystery for almost 2,000 years. There are 5 theories as to where the temple was once located. The most popular is under the Dome of the Rock. The second theory shows it to be under the Dome of the Spirits, just north of the Dome of the Rock. The third theory claims it was under the fountain, halfway between the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The fourth has the temple completely outside the Temple Mount, in the midst of what was once the city of David. The fifth is, of course, mine, which shows the temple to be in the most southern position on the Temple Mount, deep below and to the west of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The first 4 theories have one problem in common: lack of physical proof. They feel that if they were able to excavate on the mount, then they would find enough ruins of gates and walls, etc., to prove the actual location. That, however, is not allowed by the Muslims. I have found that there's a lot of physical proof if you look to the south end of the mount. I will be showing that physical proof in the form of old photos of the Ophel area and the survey maps from the 1800s, drawn by the last explorers ever allowed to enter the underground chambers, cisterns, and water channels beneath the mount. When studying about the location of the Temple of God, one of the most important things to do is to begin with the location of Solomon's Temple, built around 1000 BC. Herod tore down and rebuilt the temple on the exact same location around 19 BC. His descendants then increased the temple fortress or complex that surrounded the temple house to be double the size according to Herod's plans. These walls, doubling the size of the temple, were not completed until AD 66, and the city and temple were then destroyed a few years later in AD 70. Josephus, a Jewish historian that lived during the time of the destruction of the temple and city of Jerusalem, is a great source concerning the temple. He wrote that Herod's temple complex was a furlong in length and in width. A furlong by a furlong is approximately 600 by 600 feet. This doubled the size of Solomon's temple complex. Both temple complexes shared the same east wall. Herod felt that the east gate was too beautiful to tear down, so refused to let his builders work on it. They merely extended the east wall to the north and to the south. The temple, the priest's court, and the woman's court were rebuilt by Herod the Great pre-1st century. Later, as Herod's grandson and great-grandson extended the outer courts during the 1st century, then parts of the old wall of Solomon's complex were most likely removed. Notice that the Wailing Wall is located on the upper left side of this diagram on the 1st century wall. This survey map reveals the water channels under the Temple Mount. The aqueduct was built by Solomon, bringing water to the Temple Mount from Bethlehem through the Edom pools. It entered the mount through Wilson's Arch. It didn't go uphill from there towards the Dome of the Rock, which would have been the case if the temple had been located there, but instead the channel was laid towards the south, downhill from where it entered the mount, further indicating that the temple was located to the south. During the Second Temple period, a new way of filling the laver was devised for retrieving the water each morning using machinery. The laver was submerged into a specially made pool under the court. The laver was then hoisted up by the first priest in the morning. When I laid my temple diagram over the map of the water channels, the large pool was right next to the temple house. This was very exciting. Another branch of this water system ended under what I believe to be the location of the priest court. For me, this was the last piece of the puzzle. This section of water channel could be opened to flood the priest court each evening to cleanse it of the blood. The Mishnah tells us that the water for filling the copper laver every day was brought by a conduit from the pools of Bethlehem. The water system also branched off towards the place where the chamber of the hearth would have been located for filling the mikveh below it. There was a drain next to the altar where the water and blood would have drained into the blood channel leading to the Kidron Valley. Nehemiah's wall gives us some important information that helps us identify where the temple was not located. According to scripture, Nehemiah did not rebuild any of the temple walls. He only rebuilt the city walls, which means that the east wall of the mount that we see today was part of the city wall that Nehemiah rebuilt, and not the east wall of Solomon's temple. The east gate on that city wall was not the east gate of the temple complex. Nehemiah called this gate the commander's or inspector's gate. There is no way this is the east gate of Solomon's temple, nor that of Herod's. The true east gate, Solomon's east gate, was in the center of the east wall and entered directly into the woman's court. The ruins of the oldest gate in the eastern wall still remain under the Muslim gate that we see today. Leon Rittmeyer, after finding 2 stones of what he believes to be part of the old Hezekiah wall, 700 BC, indicates that the Hasmonean wall joins to the Hezekiah wall. This means there would also be a joint where these 2 walls meet together. The Hezekiah wall that Nehemiah would have rebuilt extended from the supposed joint and ends just beyond the commander's gate. Even though I agree with Dr. Rittmeyer about Hezekiah's wall beginning with these 2 stones, I disagree that it was a wall of the temple. Remember, Nehemiah rebuilt the city wall only. He did not rebuild any of the outer walls of the temple. Leon Rittmeyer claims this old Hezekiah city wall was the east wall of the temple compound, and so places the location of the temple where the Dome of the Rock is now. It's very interesting to trace the changes in the area from the time that Nehemiah rebuilt the city wall all the way up to when Josephus describes Fort Antonia. The wall described by Nehemiah had 2 towers on its north wall, the Tower Mea and the Tower Hananel. These towers protected the temple from a northern attack. The Mea fortress was built upon under the Hasmoneans during the late 2nd century BC and was renamed the Barras. It was rectangular and possessed several high towers. The Barras was connected to the Temple Mount by an underground passageway. The Barras was then besieged by Pompey the Great during his siege of Jerusalem in 63 BC, during which one of the towers was destroyed. Under Herod the Great, the Barras underwent extensive reconstruction. He named it Fort Antonia in honor of Mark Antony. Fort Antonio, just as the Barras and the Mea before it, was located on the old north wall that Nehemiah rebuilt. There was a natural land bridge between Fort Antonia and the hill to its north. The moat was 200 feet long, and to the east of it was a ravine running down into the Kidron Valley. The moat was cut for the purpose of separating the 2 hills and also making it impossible for catapults to be set up near the north wall of the fortress for lack of flat land. However, attacking armies would just fill in the moat and create a flat surface and break down the north wall, taking the fortress. From there, they could take the temple. It is my belief that the walls of Fort Antonia were at a northwest angle to the temple. The reason is because of a step at the northwest corner of the Dome of the Rock platform. The bottom step is not a step at all. It is, in fact, the top of a very old wall. That step, or wall, is set at an angle. The red dashed line in the map shows the Old West Wall following that same angle as it bends southward, forming the northwest corner of Fort Antonia. Recently, coins from the 1st century were found under the west wall of the Temple Mount that we see today. This means that Herod the Great did not build the southern portion of the west wall, including the bridge called Robinson's Arch. However, this bridge was one of the west gates Josephus claimed entered directly into the 600 by 600 foot temple complex. We also know that the walls of the temple were not completed until 66 AD, and yet Josephus attributes it all to Herod as the builder, who died in 4 BC. So this work was most likely completed under Herod Agrippa I and Herod Agrippa II of the House of Herod. Josephus describes the temple and Fort Antonia after the walls of the extended temple area were completed. The temple courts were extended to the north, west, and south. Fort Antonia complex was connected to the temple complex by 2 colonnades. According to Josephus, the temple compound and Fort Antonia compound together were 6 furlong around. That makes the temple complex 600 by 600 feet, and also the Fort Antonia complex as 600 by 600 feet. In this map of the 1st century Jerusalem, the red square is the location and size of the Temple Mount today. The yellow area would have been the city walls in the time of Nehemiah. Herod built a wall around the new city, Bethesda, in green, and later his grandson built a 3rd city wall, increasing the size of the city of Jerusalem, in purple. At this time, he connected his new city wall to the pre-existing Temple Mount wall, the old Nehemiah wall, further fortifying the Mount area. Please continue with Locating Solomon's Temple, Part 2. Thank you.